इंसान जो है बस दो नस्ल के होते हैं, एक होते हैं हरामी और दूसरे बेवकूफ, और ये सारा खेल इन दोनों का ही है।
I finally got around to seeing Gangs of Wasseypur, and I really liked it. The movie begins about 70 years ago, and Sadid Khan is exiled from the Indian Empire. In isolation, Sadid begins his revenge and starts a gang war that lasts decades. At the turn of the decade, Sardar Khan, Sadid's son, tries to redeem his father's honor. In doing so, he quickly becomes the most feared and powerful gangster in Wasseypur. There are a few things that you need to keep in mind before this movie review begins. First off, that this is a 5.5-hour movie. Technically, it's split into two parts, but it is one continued narrative, and the second part, one isn't really a sequel. It's supposed to be viewed as one movie. On top of that, this is a foreign movie. The only language spoken is Hindi. So, if you're not into reading movies, then you probably aren't going to like this movie. So, without further ado, let's get into the spoiler-free review of Gangs of Wasseypur. Let's begin by talking about the positives, because there are a lot of them. The first one being tone. This is an intense crime thriller. I did not expect to be on the edge of my seat as much as I was. A big reason why this movie was so intense was because the sheer brutality of it. This movie held no punches, with bloody shootouts, machete murders, stabbings, blood spraying, if you name it, this movie has it. The movie also did a great job at balancing out the violence with dialogue and character development. And it didn't really feel like a run-of-the-mill action movie like some of the Liam Neeson, that genre of movies. This movie did a great job at bringing you into the world and shows every angle of it. A combination of great cinematography and impressive visuals made it very easy for the audience to get sucked into this movie. Moreover, this is a gripping narrative. I don't think it would be possible to watch a 5.5-hour movie without being emotionally attached to the characters and the story. This movie did a good job at letting the audience pick what they feel about the characters. At some points, you might be rooting for a character as he's the obvious underdog. However, in the next scene, you might be thoroughly disgusted with some terribly brutal act that you just saw him commit. In Goodfellas, on the other hand, most people are going to root for Henry Hill because of how his life is glamorized. But in this movie, it really allows the viewer to pick as to what they think they should be rooting for. I'd also like to quickly address that the performances in this movie were pretty good. With a new language comes new line delivery, different pauses, and a unique speaking pattern. But all the actors did a good job at playing their characters, and good acting is universal. It was pretty easy to tell what the characters were thinking, why they were doing everything. They did a great job at playing their characters. And because this was the first time that I was seeing any of these actors, it made them seem a lot more authentic and realistic, as opposed to The Godfather, you're looking, okay, that's Marlon Brando. When in this movie, you're looking at, hey, this is someone who I've never seen before. It is almost like I'm looking at a real person, not a character on the screen. Although this is a good movie, this is by no means a flawless movie, and I did have a handful of problems with it. The first being how long it was. I know that some people have no problem with this. If you're someone who can sit through a 5-hour movie and be just as entertained at the beginning as you are at the end, then you should have no problem with this. But personally, when a movie begins to feel like a chore to watch, it should be time to shut it off. The last 45 minutes dragged on considerably and definitely took away from my enjoyment of the film, especially when I knew exactly what was going to happen. I'm a big advocate of making a movie as long as it needs to be. If a movie takes 3 hours to tell, then tell it in 3 hours. But I really don't think that this movie took 5.5 hours to tell. I think that you easily could have cut down on a few scenes and made it 4, and maybe even 4.5 hours, and it would have been just as good, if not better, but at the same time would have appealed to a much broader audience. My next complaint was that a lot of the dialogue felt forced and unnatural. The movie was written by 4 people, and it kind of showed. This might have been due to a bad translation, but it honestly felt like 90% of the dialogue was excellent. But that 10% just did not work. For example, the movie would show something happening, show the decision that the character has to make it obvious which one the character has to make, then in the next scene, have another character explain to the character the consequences of choosing one action. Scenes like this happened 4 or 5 times throughout the movie. And if those expository scenes were cut, the movie probably would have been 20 minutes shorter. On top of that, a lot of the dialogue that the characters were having felt unnatural. And scenes like that really took me out of the movie because normally I don't mind watching a foreign movie at all. I usually enjoy it quite a bit more. However, when there's something that's so foreign to me, I guess, something that I'm not used to in my daily life, like a bad line of dialogue, something that's unrealistic, or just because of the bad translation, it really deters from my enjoyment of the movie. So overall, I really enjoyed Gangs of Wasseypur, but I didn't love the movie. It was flawed, but also had its merits. Yes, the two can exist at the same time. From me, this movie definitely gets 4 stars, but my recommendation isn't going to be as generous. If you're a fan of other foreign movies and you've been looking at this movie for a little while, then you definitely are going to love this movie. But if you're someone who's trying to get into watching foreign films, then this might not be a place to start. If you are looking to get into them, my recommendation would be German Expressionism. I've got another video coming out on that one soon, but this is definitely not the movie. If you're a general moviegoer who likes blockbusters and action movies, then this is definitely not the movie for you. So if you enjoyed this video and you've made it this far, please drop a like, it definitely helps me out. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you've seen this movie, leave down in the comments and tell me what you thought.
आपका है तो कागज दिखाइए